When I look at my hands, I see history. 74 years of life have left marks on them, wrinkles, age spots, protruding veins. These hands have held newborn babies, cooked thousands of meals, signed million-dollar contracts. Those hands built a $47 million company. And now my own children look at those hands and see only weakness. My name is Marjorie Haddle. I founded and run Haddle Catering Solutions, the state's largest catering company for corporate clients, hospitals, and educational institutions. And I'm damn tired of my kids thinking I'm a museum piece that needs to go into storage. It all started 32 years ago, in 1993. My husband Harold died suddenly of a heart attack. 42 years old, no sign of illness. He just didn't wake up one morning. I was left alone with two children, 13-year-old Willow and 15-year-old Arthur, and a mortgage I had no money to pay. Harold worked for an insurance company, but we weren't rich. His insurance covered his funeral and some of his debts, but it wasn't enough. I had no college education, just a culinary arts degree and 10 years of homemaking under my belt. Jefferson City isn't the worst place to look for a job, but finding something to support the kids in the house seemed impossible. I started making lunches to sell, first for neighbors, then for their friends. I bought groceries in bulk, got up at 4 in the morning, cooked until 8, delivered the orders, came home and cooked the next day. Willow and Arthur helped pack and sometimes deliver the food. They hated it, especially Willow. She'd always been proud, didn't want her friends to see her delivering containers of food. "Mom, it's humiliating," she'd say, when I asked her to deliver lunch to the Patterson family who lived 3 houses down from us. But there was no choice. I was a better cook than I had been as a cashier or sales clerk, and I could do it from home while watching the kids. After 6 months, I was already cooking lunches for 20 families every day. A year later, I rented a small kitchen in an industrial zone and hired my first helper, Bella Radley, a woman in her 50s who had lost her job in a textile factory. The breakthrough came when one of my clients, Joseph Stone, a director of a local hospital, offered me a contract to do staff lunches. It was a risk. I had to take out a loan, employ 3 more people, buy equipment. Arthur said at the time, "Mom, this is crazy. You'll go bankrupt and leave us on the street." But I took the risk. And I won. The hospital was followed by a contract with the county government, then 2 large office centers. By the time Willow went to college, Huddle Catering was serving 12 regular corporate clients and dozens of one-off events each month. I was able to pay tuition for both kids, pay off the mortgage, and even buy a new house, not a mansion, but spacious, bright, in a good neighborhood. The kids grew up. Arthur graduated from business school and went to Chicago to work in an investment company. Married, divorced, remarried. He had a son, Rowan, my only joy among grandchildren. Willow earned a degree in marketing and moved back to Jefferson City. Not that she was eager to work in the family business, but she had no other offers. I created a marketing director position for her, even though in those days, all of our marketing consisted of business cards and occasional ads in the local paper. By the year 2000, Huddle Catering had grown into Huddle Catering Solutions with a downtown office, 3 production kitchens, and a staff of 80 employees. We served customers all over the state and even in neighboring counties. I hired professional managers, chefs with experience in Michelin-starred restaurants, and logistics consultants. Arthur returned from Chicago after his second divorce, bringing 10-year-old Rowan with him. I offered him the CFO job. He accepted, but without enthusiasm, as if he were doing me a favor. Willow by then had married Randall Proctor, a mid-level attorney, had 2 daughters who treated me with polite indifference, and was still marketing the company, even though she now had 3 subordinates doing all the real work. I wasn't naive. I realized that my children had not inherited my passion for business. They took the company for granted as an inevitable inheritance that would one day fall into their hands. But I hoped that in time they would see the potential and realize that Huddle Catering Solutions was not just a business, but my life's work. 5 years ago, when I turned 69, I first seriously considered handing over management. Not a complete departure, God forbid, I'm not out of my mind yet, but a gradual delegation of authority. By then, the company was valued at $38 million. We had contracts with the largest corporations in the state, 3 hospitals, 2 universities, dozens of schools. We had launched a line of frozen ready-to-eat meals under the Huddle Home brand for retail sale. I needed a personal assistant, someone who could coordinate my meetings, handle paperwork, be a liaison between me and the rest of the department. Someone smart, attentive, diplomatic. Human Resources sent me Iris Forsyth's resume. When she walked into my office for her interview, I saw a thin girl of 23 with short brown hair and the wary look of someone used to disappointment. She was dressed in a black skirt and a white blouse, modest but tasteful. Around her neck was a thin silver chain with a small pendant in the shape of a key. I later learned it was the only thing she had left of her mother. "Miss Forsyth?" I pointed to the chair across from my desk. "Have a seat." She sat down with her back straight and her resume on her lap. "Thank you for the invitation, Mrs. Haddle." Her voice was soft but confident. I ran my eyes over her resume. Bachelor of Business Administration from a local college, a year at a travel agency, 6 months at a construction company. Nothing outstanding. "Tell me, why do you want to work at Huddle Catering?" She thought for a moment, then answered, "When I was 14, your company organized meals at a summer camp for children from foster families. I was one of those kids. It was the first time I'd had a real home-cooked meal since I'd lost my parents. I didn't expect that kind of response. We did have a charity project, free lunches for a children's camp, but that was years ago." I remembered the logo on the containers, she continued. "And when I saw the vacancy, I thought it was a sign. I know I don't have a lot of experience, but I'm a quick learner and I really want to be part of a company that does something meaningful." There was no playfulness in her words, or an attempt to manipulate my emotions, just an honest answer. I asked about her skills, experience, future plans. She answered clearly, without unnecessary words, showing a sharp mind and practicality. At the end of the interview, I felt I had found exactly the person I was looking for. "Miss Forsyth, when can you start work?" She blinked, clearly not expecting the decision to be made so quickly. "I have to work for 2 weeks at my current position. 2 weeks, Monday morning, 8 o'clock. I'll see you in this office." That was 5 years ago. Since then, Iris has become not just my secretary, but my right-hand woman. She quickly understood the company structure, learned the names and positions of all the key employees, and mastered all the programs and systems. She came before me and left later, always ready for non-standard tasks. When an important contract fell through because of a mistake in the documentation, Iris spent all night double-checking every figure, found the discrepancy, and prepared a new proposal. When a scandal broke with a substandard supplier, she put together a crisis communication plan that saved our reputation. When we needed to negotiate with a union, she gathered all the necessary information, prepared the arguments, sat next to me at the negotiating table, and discreetly slipped the right documents at the right time. She didn't seek recognition or praise. She wasn't trying to undercut her colleagues or advance her career. She just did her job to the best of her ability. I began to trust her with more and more tasks, and she never let me down. Unlike my kids. Willow spent no more than 4 hours a day in the office, constantly complaining of headaches and problems with the kids. Arthur was regularly late for meetings, forgot deadlines, and got annoyed when I pointed out his mistakes. Both received generous salaries and bonuses, but treated the company as a cash cow, not as a living organism requiring constant attention and care. The first signs that they thought I was too old to manage came about 2 years ago. At the quarterly board meeting, Willow suggested that we optimize our management structure. Underneath that beautiful wording was a proposal to create an executive director position that would take over some of my responsibilities. "Mom, understand it's for your own good," Willow said after the meeting. "You're 72. You can't work at this pace forever." "I feel fine," I replied. "And as long as I'm alive, I'm still the CEO." "But you're not immortal," Arthur interjected. "What happens to the company if something happens to you?" "My will is very clear. The company will go to both of you in equal shares." They exchanged glances, quickly, but I noticed. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Then there were little things that added up. Willow started inviting her husband Randall to key account meetings, even though he had nothing to do with the company. Arthur started spending more time with the finance department, asking about contract details, access to bank accounts. They stopped informing me of certain meetings, making decisions without my input. On my 74th birthday, 3 months ago, they threw a lavish celebration at the main office. Cake, champagne, flowers, speeches. Willow handed me a gold watch beautiful, expensive, engraved Marjorie Haddle, founder and inspirer. It was like I'd already retired. Mom, you've created something amazing, Willow said, raising her glass. But it's time to think about a well-deserved retirement. You should be enjoying the fruits of your labor, not sitting in the office until nightfall. The staff applauded. I smiled, but inside I felt a growing unease. This wasn't just a birthday celebration, it was a rehearsal for my send-off. After the celebration, Iris came into my office with a folder of papers. Mrs. Haddle, I've prepared the reports for the new contract with the medical center, she said, placing the folder on the desk. Then, lowering her voice, she added, and there's something else you should see. She pulled a flash drive out of her bag. What's this? A recording of Miss Willow and Mr. Arthur's meeting yesterday with a lawyer from Brightwood and Associates. They didn't know I was in the office next door. You're spying on my kids? I didn't know whether to be indignant or grateful. No, ma'am. I'm protecting the company's interests and your interests. Please, just listen. I inserted the flash drive into the computer and turned on the recording. Willow's voice sounded clear and confident. A medical examination. We need proof that she's no longer capable of making informed decisions. The latest contract with the city schools is a clear mistake. We're losing money. This could be the first sign of dementia. Arthur's voice. Willow, don't overreact. Mom doesn't have dementia. She's just outdated. Management techniques from the last century. No flexibility, no understanding of current trends. Lawyer's voice. In any case, you'll need the opinion of at least 2 independent doctors to initiate proceedings to declare her incompetent to run the company. And I must warn you that it's a long and complicated process, especially if she resists. I turned off the tape. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or resentment, from anger. When was that? Yesterday at 16:30, Iris answered. I happened to overhear the beginning of the conversation, so I thought I'd write it down. I apologize if I overstepped my authority. No, you did the right thing. I leaned back in my chair. So my kids think I'm a senile old woman who should be consigned to the dustbin of history. They just don't know what they're doing, Iris said quietly. The company is thriving because of you. The latest contract with the schools is a strategic decision, even if the first year is not very profitable. It's a long-term investment in our reputation. I looked at her with surprise. She really did understand the nature of my decisions better than my own children. What are you going to do? She asked. I didn't know. All I felt at that moment was exhaustion and frustration. I had spent 3 decades building this business, denying myself everything to give my children a better life. And this is how they repay me. Nothing yet, I said. I need to think about it. Iris nodded and headed for the door, but stopped at the threshold. Mrs. Haddle, you're stronger than they think, and smarter. Don't let them take what is rightfully yours. After she left, I sat for a long time, staring out the window at the city that had witnessed my journey from widowed housewife to multi-million-dollar business owner. Jefferson City wasn't New York or Chicago, but here I had created something meaningful. Something I was proud of, and I wasn't about to give it away so easily, not even to my own children, especially my own children. The week after my birthday passed in tense anticipation. I didn't know when Willow and Arthur would take the next step, but I was sure they wouldn't stop with secret meetings with lawyers. I scrutinized every document I signed, asked more questions in meetings, and tried not to be alone with either of the kids for long. Iris became my eyes and ears in the office. She noticed the little things, whispers, glances, conversations suddenly breaking off when I appeared. Not overtly spying, just being attentive. Every morning she brought me coffee and a brief report on the mood of the company. That morning her face was especially serious. Had something happened? I asked, taking a cup of coffee. Iris closed the office door and sat down across from me. Miss Willow went out with Gregory Lancaster yesterday. Gregory Lancaster was the chairman of the board of directors of Huddle Kettering Solutions. Technically, I reported to the board, although in practice my word was always the deciding factor. After all, I owned a controlling interest. But the board could cause problems if it decided to act against me. What did they talk about? I don't know exactly. They were having lunch at the Blue Oyster. Janet from accounting saw them there. I had coffee. The Blue Oyster was the most expensive restaurant in town, a place for special occasions and important business meetings. Willow wouldn't take Lancaster there just to chat. What else? Arthur asked for a full financial statement for the last 5 years. Said he was preparing a presentation for potential investors. What kind of investors? We're not looking for outside funding. Exactly. Iris pursed her lips. And another thing. Mr. Proctor, Miss Willow's husband, called twice yesterday, asking about her schedule for today. He was very insistent that I specify the exact times of all your meetings together. Randall Proctor. He's a mid-level lawyer with a lot of ambition. Willow met him at a charity event 8 years ago, and he saw her as a ticket to riches. I wouldn't be surprised if the idea to remove me from the board came from him. Thank you, Iris. Keep me posted. She nodded and left the office, and I opened my day planner. I had an appointment with Willow at 11 o'clock to discuss the new marketing strategy. Normally, I didn't pay much attention to these meetings. Willow rarely offered anything of real value, so I just nodded, made a couple adjustments, and let her go about her business. But today might have been different. I decided to prepare. I opened the latest reports from the marketing department, looked at the numbers, and analyzed the effectiveness of recent campaigns. As I expected, the results were mediocre. What Willow lacked wasn't so much talent as a genuine interest in the business. At precisely 11 o'clock, my office door opened without a knock. Willow entered, carrying a file folder and a clipboard. She was wearing a sleek gray suit, her hair in a tight bun, her makeup flawless. She looked like a successful businesswoman from an expensive watch commercial. Only her eyes gave away the tension. Too bright, too determined. "Good morning, Mom," she said, not smiling. "I hope you're feeling well today." This question about my well-being had begun to irritate me lately. It was as if she expected me to admit weakness or illness one day. "Fine as always," I replied. "Let's see your strategy." Willow sat down across from me, opened a folder, and pulled out a glossy brochure. "It's not really a marketing strategy," she said. "More like a new vision for the company as a whole." On the cover of the brochure was the new logo, a stylized H in a minimalist design, nothing like our traditional logo, which featured a steaming pot with the company name on it. "What's that?" I didn't even try to hide my surprise. "Rebranding." Willow said the word with as much pathos as if she were announcing the second coming. Huddle Catering Solutions sounds old-fashioned. I suggest shortening it to HCS Group and completely revamping the visual identity. I flipped through the brochure in silence. New colors, cool gray and turquoise instead of our warm orange and brown. New fonts, sharp geometric instead of rounded, friendly. New slogans, innovative food solutions instead of our homemade flavor for your business. "This is not our company," I finally said. "We're not a faceless corporation. We're a family business with a history and a reputation." "That's exactly the problem, Mom," Willow pitched forward. "The world has changed. Corporate clients want to work with modern, innovative companies, not a family-owned diner." "A diner?" I felt the blood rush to my face. "This diner feeds half the city and costs $47 million. It could be worth twice that if you weren't clinging to outdated principles." Willow's voice became sharper. "Let's face it, Mom. You built a great business for your time, but now your time has passed. New technologies, new approaches, new customer expectations. You just can't keep up with the changes." I took a deep breath, holding back my anger. I didn't want to give her a reason to accuse me of being emotionally unstable. "Willow, I appreciate your commitment to growing the company, but you need a good reason before you change something that's worked well for decades. Where's the research? Where are the focus groups? Where's the evidence that our customers want these changes?" "They're here." She opened the clipboard and turned it toward me. "A survey of our 20 largest corporate clients. 78% think our brand is outdated or in need of an update. I looked at the data. Something didn't add up. When was this survey conducted? I don't remember signing the order. Willow hesitated for a moment. It was a marketing department initiative, an informal survey. So you were calling our clients behind my back and asking them what they thought of the company I ran? Don't be so dramatic, Mom. I was doing my job, market research. I closed the brochure and put it aside. Willow, I'm not discussing a rebranding you prepared without my knowledge or approval. If you want to propose changes in marketing strategy, do it within the existing brand. The daughter's face contorted with anger. She had never been able to hide her emotions, another reason why she wouldn't make a good manager. You're unbearable, she exclaimed. You refuse to hear any proposal that doesn't fit your vision. The company is suffocating under your control. The company is thriving under my leadership. I kept my composure even though I was seething inside. If you don't like my policies, you can always find another job. It was a mistake. The reminder that she depended on me only made her more furious. Another place of employment? Willow stood up, resting her hands on my desk. This is my company as much as it is yours. I grew up with it. I know every customer, every supplier. I have a say. You have a say as marketing director, not as the owner. Not as owner yet, she squinted. But one day, Huddle Catering will be mine, and I won't let you ruin it with your stubbornness before I take the reins. There it is, a direct threat. I felt strangely relieved that the masks were finally off. So you're just waiting for me to die or become incapacitated? I asked quietly. That's very touching, dear. Don't overreact. Willow took a step back. I'm talking about the natural order of things. You're 74. Most people your age are long retired, enjoying life, traveling. Why are you clinging to the company? Isn't there anything else in your life? That question hit a sore spot. Really, what did I have besides Huddle Catering? My husband died 32 years ago. Friends are almost non-existent, some dead, others gone. Hobbies? What hobbies when I worked 12 to 14 hours a day for most of my life? I saw my grandchildren only on holidays. Willow didn't welcome my involvement in her daughter's education, and Arthur's son Rowan, though closer to me, lived with his father and rarely saw me. But I wasn't about to admit my vulnerability to my daughter. My life is none of your business, Willow. And if you really care about the company and not just your ambitions, you have to realize that drastic changes can cause irreparable damage. You know what, Mom? Willow's got her papers together. I tried to be nice. I was hoping you'd realize it's time to make way for a new generation. But you're too stubborn. You're too bossy. You leave me no choice. What choice are you talking about? She headed for the door, but stopped at the threshold. The board of directors. Ultimately, they can initiate a change in management if they feel the CEO is not doing his job. I have a controlling interest, I reminded her. Shares can be challenged if the owner is declared incapacitated, Willow countered, especially if there was evidence that his decisions were detrimental to the company. With that, she walked out, slamming the door loudly. I sat there, staring at the closed door, my hands trembling, not with anger anymore, but with the realization of the real threat. Willow hadn't just dreamed of me leaving. She was actively working on it, researching legal loopholes, preparing the ground. I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer, Simon Bright. We'd worked together for over 20 years and I trusted him completely. Simon, I need your advice. It's urgent. Today, if possible. Is something wrong, Marjorie? His voice sounded concerned. Yes, my daughter is trying to remove me from the company. The meeting with Simon was scheduled for 16 o'clock. Until then, I tried to work as normal, though my mind kept returning to the confrontation with Willow. I reviewed reports, had a scheduled video conference with vendors, and signed the documents Iris brought in. She was impeccably efficient as always, but I could see the worry in her eyes. At 16 o'clock, Simon Bright entered my office, a tall, lean man in his 60s with a neatly trimmed gray beard. He was dressed in an immaculate gray suit and carried a leather briefcase that seemed to have been with him his entire career. Marjorie, he shook my hand warmly. Tell me what's going on. I outlined the situation, from the conversation Iris had overheard to today's confrontation with Willow. Simon listened carefully, occasionally making notes in his notebook. So, he said when I finished. Your daughter wants to initiate proceedings to have you declared incompetent to run the company and turn control over to the board of directors, who will presumably appoint her as the new CEO. Yeah, that sounds about right. It's a complicated and lengthy process. Simon tapped his pen on his notepad. They'll need serious evidence of your incompetence. Medical reports, evidence of systematic mismanagement that damaged the company. Do they have anything concrete? I've been thinking. Willow mentioned the contract with the city schools. It's really not very profitable in the short term, but it's a strategic decision. In 2 or 3 years, it'll start generating a steady profit. And this decision was approved by the finance department? Yes. Arthur signed off on all the calculations, albeit reluctantly. Anything else? I don't know. Maybe they're gathering information about some of my mistakes. Willow said she was surveying clients without my knowledge. Simon frowned. This was getting more serious. She could ask leading questions, phrasing them in such a way as to get the answers she wanted. What should I do? First, check your health, Simon said firmly. A full medical examination by independent specialists. We need documentation that you're in perfect health physically and mentally. I'm perfectly healthy. I'm sure you are. But we need official papers in case they do try to challenge your legal capacity. He was right, I nodded. Good. What else? Second, an audit of the company, independent, thorough. If your management decisions were indeed strategically sound, an audit will prove it. That's going to take a long time. Yeah, but better safe than sorry. And thirdly, Simon hesitated. It might be worth reconsidering your will. I looked at him in surprise. What does a will have to do with it? It's about trying to remove me from the board while I'm alive. That's true. But if they're willing to take that step, it means they want control of the company at all costs. And in the event of, unforeseen circumstances, you need to make sure that your will is honored. Contingencies. Simon was too delicate to say, in the event of your death. But I got the gist of it. That evening, I received an email from Gregory Lancaster, the chairman of the board of directors. He was notifying me of a special board meeting scheduled for the following Tuesday. There was only one item on the agenda: evaluating the effectiveness of the company's current management. I called Gregory right away. We had known each other for 15 years, since he had joined the board. I had always considered him an ally, if not a friend. Gregory, what's going on? Why is this meeting being called without me being involved in the planning? Marjorie, I was just about to call you. His voice sounded strained. I'm not the one taking the initiative. 3 members of the board have requested a special meeting. The bylaws require me to call one. Who requested it? Pause. Marjorie, I can't. Come on, Gregory. We both know Willow's behind this. The question is why you're indulging her. I'm not indulging anyone. He sounded defensive. I follow procedures. And frankly, some of the issues Willow raised deserve discussion. Like what? The contract with the schools, your refusal to rebrand, your reluctance to delegate authority. You've been discussing management decisions with my daughter behind my back? I couldn't believe such a betrayal. Marjorie, you have to understand. The board is responsible to all shareholders. If there's a concern that the company isn't reaching its potential because of, a conservative approach to management, we have an obligation to address them. Conservative approach? I almost laughed with indignation. The company has grown 20% in the last 3 years. We've launched 2 new product lines. We opened a branch in a neighboring state. Is that what you call conservatism? You know what I mean? Gregory sighed. The world is changing faster than ever. Digitalization, automation, new consumption patterns. And I'm hiring the best people to keep up with those changes. But I'm not going to let the company I spent 30 years building turn into a faceless corporation with no soul or values. No one's talking about, Gregory, I interrupted him. I will be at that meeting, and I'll be ready. If anyone wants to challenge my right to run the company I created, let them try. But warn them, it won't be easy. I hung up the phone, feeling my heart pounding. Everything was happening faster than I'd expected. Willow wasted no time. She went to the board members right after our fight. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. I needed to prepare for the battle ahead. I asked the finance department for a detailed analysis of all strategic decisions over the past 5 years, with a focus on their long-term effectiveness. asked HR for statistics on employee turnover and employee satisfaction, contacted key accounts to get letters of support from them. I wasn't going to give up without a fight. If Willow wanted a war, she'd get one. At noon, Arthur entered my office without knocking. His face was a mixture of guilt and determination. "Mom, we need to talk." "About what, Arthur? About how you and your sister plan to share my company?" He wrinkled his nose. "Don't be like that. We just want to discuss the future." "The future?" I leaned back in my chair. "Okay, let's discuss it. What kind of future do you see for Huddle Catering?" Arthur sat across from me, rubbing his hands together, a gesture he'd done since childhood when he was nervous. "I see a company that retains its values but becomes more modern, more dynamic, with a clearer division of responsibilities and authority." "And where am I in that picture?" He looked away. "You could be honorary chairman, a consultant. Your experience is invaluable, but the young and energetic should be in charge," I finished for him. "Like you and Willow." "It doesn't have to be us," he said uncertainly. "We could hire a professional CEO from outside the company." That was news, so the kids were at odds. Willow clearly saw herself in my shoes, and Arthur seemed to prefer a neutral figure. "And how will you divide the shares?" I asked bluntly. Willow was talking about 60% for herself and 40% for you. Arthur shuddered. We've been discussing different options. Nothing's been decided." "But you're already planning how you're going to divide the company between you." "Mother, it's only natural. We're your children, your heirs. Of course we're thinking about the future." I looked at my son carefully. There may have been some truth in what he said, but the way they were acting secretly, behind my back, trying to remove me by force, was neither natural nor right. "Arthur, I always thought the company would pass to you when I died. Not because you deserve it with your labor or talent, but simply because you are my children. But now I'm not sure that's the right decision." He turned pale. "What do you mean by that?" "I mean that betrayal has a price," I said calmly but firmly. "You and Willow have shown that you're willing to take away what I've worked so hard to build. Why should I willingly give it to you when I'm dead?" Arthur stood up, his face contorted with anger and fear. "You cannot disinherit us. We are your children." "I haven't decided anything yet, Arthur, but I am seriously considering revising my will." He headed for the door, muttering curses under his breath. He turned around on the threshold. "Willow's right. You've been on the throne too long. Power has corrupted you." After he left, all I felt was tiredness. My own children, whom I'd raised, taught, given everything I could, now saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to wealth. They valued neither my labor nor my love. To them, I was just an old woman who had stayed on the stage too long. But they were wrong if they thought I would go without a fight. And they were sorely mistaken if they thought that after all this, the company would automatically be theirs. After my conversation with Arthur, I sat in my office for a long time, trying to calm down. It was drizzling outside the window, turning Jefferson City into a blurry watercolor of gray buildings and wet asphalt. The weather matched my mood perfectly, depressed, gloomy, with flashes of anger like distant lightning flashes. The children's betrayal hit harder than I expected. Somewhere deep inside, I'd always known that neither Willow nor Arthur shared my passion for the business. But I hoped that they would at least respect my hard work, my life invested in Huddle Catering, that they would realize that the company is not just a source of income for me, but an extension of myself, my legacy, my contribution to the world. How naive. All they saw was money, $47 million to be divided, to be spent, to be used for their pleasure. They didn't see the thousands of early risings, sleepless nights, canceled vacations, and weekends. Didn't remember how I missed their school plays because I was preparing food for a corporate event. Didn't appreciate that it was because of my work that they were educated at the best universities, lived in a nice house, and never knew want. I stood up and walked to the window. The rain intensified, drumming on the glass as if rushing me to make a decision. But what was it? What were my options? 1. Give up. Retire, hand over the reins to my children or the CEO they hired, become an honorary chairman with no real power. 2. Fight. Leverage my controlling interest, the support of key customers, the loyalty of most employees. Third, I didn't yet know what that option was, but I felt there must be another way. There was a knock on the door. I knew it was Iris, only she knocked like this, 2 short knocks, 1 long. "Come in," I said, not turning away from the window. Iris came in carrying a tray with a cup of tea and a plate of almond cookies, my favorite. "I thought you could use a snack," she said, setting the tray on the table. "You haven't left your office since this morning." I turned, trying to smile. "Thank you, darling. You're as thoughtful as ever." She looked at me carefully. "You're upset. Did something happen?" I sighed and went back to the table. Strangely, I wanted to talk to her. Not as a subordinate, but as a friend. Arthur came by, confirmed that he and Willow were actively planning my removal, even discussing how they'd divide the stock between them. Iris sat across from me uninvited, another sign of how our relationship had changed in the last few days. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "It's not fair." "Life isn't fair, dear." I sipped my tea. "But thank you. Your support means a lot to me." "What are you going to do?" "That's a good question. I'd like to know the answer myself." "Well, for starters, prepare for the board meeting." Willow managed to convince Gregory to call a special meeting on Tuesday. The main issue is to evaluate the effectiveness of the current management team. "You mean you?" Iris frowned. "This is outrageous after all you've done for the company." "Business is no place for sentimentality," I smiled weakly, though I hoped I could expect at least basic gratitude from my own children. What can I do to help? I wondered. It wasn't an idle question. Iris could really be useful. "I need information. Which of the council members are on whose side? What arguments Willow is preparing? What's going on in the company? Sentiments, rumors, concerns." Iris nodded. "I'll gather what I can. I have a good relationship with the secretaries of most of the board members, and I can hear conversations in the office that don't reach you. Just be careful. I don't want you to get in trouble because of me." "Don't worry," she smiled. "I know how to be discreet when I need to be." We finished our tea, discussing the current affairs of the company. Iris told me about a new contract with a chain of private clinics, about problems with the supply of organic products, about a request from the university to expand the range of vegetarian dishes. Listening to her, I was once again struck by how well she knew every aspect of our business. Not superficially, like Willow, who was only interested in the marketing side, and not formally like Arthur, who only saw numbers in reports. Iris understood the core, the interrelationships between departments, the needs of customers, the long-term consequences of short-term decisions. "You're amazing," I said. "You know the business better than a lot of managers who've been here for years." Iris was embarrassed. "I just listen carefully and memorize, and I'm really interested." "Exactly. You're interested. You care." I shook my head. "My kids never really cared. It was always just a source of income for them." "Maybe because they never knew what it was like to have nothing," Iris said quietly. "When you have no family, no support, you begin to appreciate what you have and those who help you." It was true. Willow and Arthur had grown up well off. Yes, the first few years after Harold's death were difficult, but they were too young to really realize it. They didn't see me counting every penny, saving on myself to make sure they had enough for school lunches and new clothes. "Tell me about yourself," I asked out of the blue. "Not as an employee, as a person. Who are you, Iris Forsyth?" She blinked in surprise, then smiled a little sadly but sincerely. "I'm nobody special, Mrs. Haddle. Just an ordinary girl with a not-so-happy childhood and a drive to do something meaningful with her life. Tell me about your childhood, if it's not too much trouble." Iris was silent for a moment as if gathering her thoughts. "My parents died in a car accident when I was 4. I vaguely remember them, more of a feeling than a concrete memory. My mom smelled like vanilla and always wore this little silver key on a chain." She touched her pendant absent-mindedly. "It's the only thing I have left of her." "And your relatives?" "There was no one who could take me in. Or didn't want to. I don't know exactly. When I was 6, I was adopted by the Forsyths, an old couple from the suburbs. They were not abusive, just indifferent. I think they took me in out of a sense of duty, not out of love for children. At 13, Mrs. Forsyth died of cancer, and Mr. Forsyth started drinking soon after. I was put back into the system. Then there were 2 more foster homes, neither of which I stayed in for long. At 16, I ran away, lived with a friend, worked as much as I could to finish school. And yet you got a college degree, I said respectfully. Yes, Iris smiled slightly. It wasn't easy, scholarships, grants, working nights, but I always knew that education was my only chance for a better life. So how did you end up at Huddle Catering? I wasn't kidding when I talked about summer camp. It really was one of the most vivid memories of my childhood. 2 weeks where I felt like a regular kid, not an orphan. And the food? You can't imagine what real home-cooked food means to a child who has only eaten school lunches and convenience foods for years. I felt a lump in my throat. I never thought of our charity program from that side. To me, it was just a good cause, a way to give something back to the community. But for kids like Iris, it could mean so much more. When I saw the job posting, it seemed like a sign, she continued. A chance to work for a company that once made me happy, even if only for a short time. I didn't expect much, just a job with a decent salary. But then what? Then I met you. She looked me straight in the eye. And I saw a woman who had built something meaningful out of nothing, who didn't give up when the going got tough, who built not just a business but a company with heart and values. I never said this, but you've been an example to me, someone I'd like to be someday. I was touched to the core. Tears sprang to my eyes. Thank you, dear. That means a lot to me, especially now. Iris was embarrassed and quickly changed the subject. So, what are we going to do about the board of directors? Do you have a plan? I sighed, returning to the pressing issues at hand. Simon recommends a full medical examination to have my legal capacity documented, and an independent audit of the company to prove the effectiveness of my leadership. That makes sense. What else? He also suggested revising the will. Iris frowned. Do you think it's that serious? I don't know, but it's better to be safe. I looked at her thoughtfully. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? She hesitated, clearly not expecting that question. I would probably look for allies, people who shared your vision for the company and could help keep it going even if you were gone. Allies, I repeated. Yeah, that makes sense. We talked for another hour or so, discussing strategy for the upcoming board meeting. Iris came up with some brilliant ideas, like preparing a presentation on the long-term results of my controversial decisions, showing how they'd ultimately led to increased profits, or to invite representatives of key clients to the meeting who could attest to their satisfaction with our services. When she left, I was left sitting at the table, reflecting on our conversation. Something about Iris touched a string in my soul. Maybe it was her single-mindedness, so reminiscent of my own when I was younger. Maybe it was her understanding of the nature of business, which was sorely lacking in my children. Or just human decency, a rare quality these days. Allies, I repeated to myself. People who shared my vision and could help keep it alive, and suddenly it hit me. The solution, the very third option I'd been looking for, had been right in front of me all along. I pulled out my phone and called Simon. I need to change my will, I said without preamble. How soon can we do it? Marjorie? He sounded surprised. Are you sure? It's a big decision. I'm absolutely sure. What's more, I want it done by Tuesday. Before the council meeting? Simon was silent for a moment. I can organize for Monday, but I need to know the details of the changes in order to prepare the paperwork. I'll come and see you tomorrow and we'll discuss it. And, Simon, this has to be kept strictly between us. No one can know, especially not my children. Of course, client confidentiality is sacred. As I hung up the phone, I felt a sudden sense of relief. It was as if the weight that had been weighing on my shoulders was suddenly lighter. I had a plan. I spent the weekend preparing for the two most important events of the coming week: a meeting with my lawyer and a board meeting. I gathered all the necessary documents, analyzed the financials, and prepared arguments against Willow's possible charges. Iris, true to her word, gathered information and reported back to me. According to her information, Willow had managed to convince only 2 members of the board to fully support her. 3 others, including Gregory, were taking a wait-and-see attitude. The other 6 were leaning toward maintaining the status quo, that is, my leadership. Monday morning, I went to Simon's office, a solid red brick building in Jefferson City's business district. His secretary, A woman about my age with whom we sometimes exchanged cookie recipes escorted me into the attorney's office. Simon got up from behind his desk to greet me. There was a stack of papers on the desk, a draft of a new will he'd prepared based on our preliminary conversation. "Sit down, Marjorie," he said, pointing to a chair. "I've prepared everything as you asked, but I want to make sure you fully understand the implications of this change." I sat down, straightening the folds in my skirt. "Simon, we've known each other for over 20 years. Have you ever seen me make important decisions without thinking them through?" He smiled. "No, that's why I'm worried. It's not like you to make such drastic changes in such a short time." "Circumstances have changed drastically, Simon. My children have shown their true colors about me and the company. I can't trust them with my life's work." He nodded, recognizing my point. "And you're sure that Miss Forsyth is a suitable alternative?" I wasn't surprised he was asking that. After all, I was about to leave a controlling interest in a multi-million-dollar company to a girl who'd only worked for me for 5 years. "I'm more than sure," I replied firmly. "Iris has all the qualities needed to run Huddle Catering. She is smart, hardworking, principled. She understands the business and shares my values. And just as importantly, she is committed to the company not because of money, but because she truly believes in what we do." "Nevertheless, such a decision will cause resistance," Simon said cautiously. "Your children will probably contest the will." "Let them try," I shrugged. "You said yourself that legally I have every right to dispose of my property as I see fit." "Yes, but they could argue that you were incapacitated or under the influence. So we're going to do a full medical evaluation, and I want independent witnesses present at the signing of the will who can confirm that I am acting of my own free will and in my right mind." Simon nodded. "I've already arranged that. Dr. Richards will be here in half an hour to make a preliminary assessment of your mental state. And I've invited 2 notaries as witnesses." "Good," I smiled. "You're always one step ahead, Simon." We spent the next hour scrutinizing every clause of the new will. The major change was dramatic. Instead of an equal division of shares between Willow and Arthur, the controlling interest 60% went to Iris Forsyth. The children received 15% each. The remaining 10% would be split between my grandson Rowan and the orphan charity I plan to establish. In addition, Iris was appointed executor of the will and given the power to make all decisions concerning the company in the event of my incapacity or death. This was an important clause, given Willow's attempts to remove me from management. "There's one more thing I'd like to add here," I said as I finished reading the document. "I want to include a letter explaining my decision so that there's no doubt about my motives." "That's a good idea," Simon agreed. "You can dictate it now, and we'll include it in the packet." I explained why I'd made the decision, not out of revenge or resentment, but out of genuine concern for the future of the company. Simon wrote down my words, nodding occasionally. Dr. Richards then arrived to conduct an evaluation of my mental state. I answered questions, took standardized tests of memory, logic, and decision-making ability. At the end, he issued a report confirming my full capacity. Then, the notaries arrived, a man and a woman, both with solid professional experience. They scrutinized my ID card, asked a few questions to make sure I was acting voluntarily and aware of the consequences of my actions. Finally, the moment of signing came. Simon spread the documents out on the table, indicating the places for signatures. I took the pen, thinking for a moment about the significance of this moment. One signature and the future of the company, my life's work, would change forever. But there was no doubt. I was absolutely certain of my decision. Iris was the right person to keep and build on what I had created. She deserved this chance more than my children, who were just waiting for a chance to change everything. I put my signature on every page of the will, on the letter explaining my motives, on all the related documents. The notaries sealed everything with their seals and signatures. Dr. Richards enclosed his report. "That's it," Simon said, gathering up the documents. "The new will take effect immediately, superseding all previous versions." The board meeting didn't go as Willow had planned. I was well prepared, armed with facts, figures, and majority support. When Willow began her speech about the need to modernize management and signs of outdated approaches, I calmly presented the results of an independent audit showing the company's steady growth under my leadership. When she mentioned the school's contract as an example of my incompetence, I showed a financial model proving its strategic value over the long term. In the end, the board voted to retain the current governance structure. 8 votes to 3 was a more than convincing victory. Willow walked out of the boardroom, making no secret of her fury. Arthur avoided my gaze, and I felt less triumph than fatigue and sadness at having to publicly defend myself against my own children's attacks. But life went on. After the board meeting, I made a decision I had long considered to begin gradually teaching Iris all aspects of the business. Not because I was planning to resign, by no means, but the events of the last few weeks had shown how vulnerable a company was when its future depended on one person. I didn't tell her about the will. That might have changed our working dynamic, created unnecessary pressure. Instead, I simply expanded her responsibilities, involving her in more complex and strategic tasks. Iris, I want you to attend a meeting with the private clinic network on Thursday, I told her after another meeting. She looked at me in surprise. But aren't these strategic talks? I usually just prepare materials and… Right. But it's time for you to participate in these meetings directly. You know our strengths, our offer. I want you to see how we build relationships with key accounts. Iris looked both excited and concerned. I'm not sure I'm ready. It's very responsible, and I've never been involved in a negotiation like this before. That's exactly why you should start, I smiled. Don't worry, I'll be there for you. You just observe, take notes, and if you have any questions or ideas, feel free to speak up. Thus began her informal training. I took Iris to all important meetings, with clients, suppliers, bankers. I familiarized her with the intricacies of pricing, logistics, personnel management. I spent hours with her explaining my approach to solving various business problems. Iris turned out to be an excellent student. She grasped things on the fly, asked deep questions, and adapted quickly to new situations. And most importantly, she shared my vision of the company not as just a commercial enterprise, but as a community of people united by a common purpose and values. Of course, such changes could not go unnoticed, especially Willow, who, despite her defeat on the board, had not abandoned her ambitions. One morning, she walked into my office without knocking while Iris and I were discussing the quarterly financial report. "Mom, we need to talk," she announced, ignoring Iris's presence. I looked at my daughter over my glasses. "Good morning, Willow. As you can see, I'm busy. Maybe later?" "No, now." She crossed her arms over her chest. "In private." I sighed and nodded to Iris. "We'll finish this later. Please prepare the preliminary calculations for the organic product line expansion project." Iris gathered the documents and walked out, quietly closing the door behind her. Willow immediately took her place across from me. "What's going on, Mom?" she asked without preamble. "You're making that girl your deputy?" "I'm expanding her duties, if that's what you mean," I replied calmly. "Iris shows great potential and interest in business. I'm just giving her the opportunity to learn and develop. At my and Arthur's expense." Willow raised her voice. "She attends meetings that we should be in, makes decisions that we should be making. You are preparing her for her position." I looked at my daughter carefully. There was anger in her eyes, but also fear of losing what she thought was rightfully hers. "Willow," I said softly, "no one is taking your position away from you or Arthur. You're still the marketing director and the CFO, but I have the right to bring in people I think are capable and promising to run the company." "She's only been here 5 years." Willow shook her hands. "I've been here 20. Arthur's 15. We're your children, damn it. This company should belong to us." "Own it." I raised an eyebrow. "That's an interesting way of putting it. The company belongs to me, in case you've forgotten, and I get to decide how it's run." Willow was silent for a moment, apparently realizing that she'd gone too far. "That's not what I meant," she said, lowering her voice. "Sure, the company's yours now, but you always said you were building it for future generations, for your family, for Arthur and me, for my daughters and Rowan." "And that's true," I nodded. "But the future of the company depends not only on who owns it, but also on who runs it. I want to make sure that Huddle Catering continues to grow in the direction I think is right. And you don't trust us to do that? Willow's voice sounded resentful. Your own children? I sighed. How do I explain to her that this isn't about trust, but about vision? That her plans to modernize the company essentially meant destroying everything that made Huddle Catering special: our family atmosphere, our focus on quality, our customer relationships built on personal trust, not corporate contracts. It's not about trust, Willow. It's about understanding the business. You're a great marketer, but you have a vision for the future of this company that's, let's just say it's different from mine. So you're really grooming her for your position. Willow narrowed her eyes. You changed your will, didn't you? Giving the company to her instead of us? I hadn't expected such a direct question, and I was confused for a moment. Then I pulled myself together. My will is my own business, Willow. I don't have to discuss it with you or anyone else. She stood up, glaring at me with undisguised fury. You're going to regret this, Mom. You can't just take away our inheritance. We're not going to let some upstart steal what's rightfully ours. In the weeks that followed, the tension only escalated. Willow began to openly sabotage my attempts to involve Iris in the running of the company. She forgot to invite us to important department meetings, delayed reports I asked her to prepare, and spread rumors that Iris was taking advantage of my weakness and manipulating me. Arthur, though less aggressively, was also showing his displeasure. He became cold to Iris, answering her questions formally and reluctantly, sometimes simply ignoring her presence at meetings. A month later, I decided to have a family dinner at my house, partly in the hope of smoothing over the growing conflict with the children, partly so that they would see Iris in an informal setting and perhaps start to relate to her better. I invited Willow and her husband Randall and daughters Arthur and his son Rowan, and of course Iris. I ordered dinner at my favorite restaurant. At my age, cooking for a large group was exhausting. I set the table in the dining room of my house, a spacious room with a large oak table that I'd bought 30 years ago, when the business was just beginning to make a serious profit. Willow had arrived with her husband, but without her daughters, said they had some school activities. I didn't believe that excuse, but I didn't insist. Arthur had brought Rowan, which brightened the evening a little. My 16-year-old grandson was the only one of the family who seemed genuinely happy to see me. Iris was the last to arrive, clearly nervous. She wore a simple black dress, her hair in a neat bun, minimal makeup. She looked more like she was going to a business meeting than a family dinner. The dinner began in a tense but polite atmosphere. We talked about the weather, city news, and the new shopping center that had opened near my house. Iris took little part in the conversation but listened attentively, smiling politely from time to time. That changed when Randall, who had been drinking heavily by then, decided to get down to business. So how's our young protege's training going? He nodded toward Iris. Marjorie, have you taught her all the secrets of business yet? There was a barely concealed sneer in his voice. I felt Iris tense up. Iris is a very capable student, I said calmly. And her help is invaluable, especially now that the company is growing. Oh, yes, it is, Randall grinned ironically. Under your careful guidance, and of course with the help of Miss Forsyth, who was so fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. What do you mean? I tensed up, sensing a catch. Well, you have to admit it's an amazing coincidence. A young, ambitious girl shows up at a company where the owner is an older woman with no obvious successor, and suddenly becomes her right-hand man, her confidant. Willow kicked her husband under the table, but it was too late. His words hung in the air, poisoning the atmosphere. Iris has earned my trust through her work and dedication, I said coldly. And I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't make insinuations about my staff. Rowan, who was sitting next to Iris, asked with teenage directness, why aren't Aunt Willow and Daddy going to run the company after Grandma? There was an awkward pause. All eyes turned to me. Rowan, that's a difficult question, I said softly. The future of the company depends on many factors. But you've always said that Huddle Catering is a family business, Rowan insisted. That you were building it for us. Yes, for the family, I smiled at my grandson. But running a company is not only a right, but also a responsibility. You need certain skills, experience, and understanding of business. Didn't Dad and Aunt Willow have any? Rowan looked puzzled. Randall laughed. That's a great question, kid. Come on, Marjorie, explain to your grandson why you don't trust your own children. It's not about trust, I said firmly. It's about a vision for the future of the company. We each have a different one. What are you talking about? Willow asked defiantly. What's wrong with our vision? You want to change everything, I answered bluntly. Rebranding, new structure, new priorities. Everything that made Huddle Catering special you think is outdated and unnecessary. Because it is, Willow exclaimed. The world is changing, Mom. You can't cling to the past forever. It's not the past. I shook my head. It's values that never get old: quality, honesty, caring about people. And we don't? Willow raised her voice. You don't think Arthur and I are good enough for your precious company? I think you have different priorities, I answered bluntly, and a different vision for the future of Huddle Catering. You mean global food? Rowan asked suddenly, looking at his father. That big company you want to merge with? There was dead silence in the room. All eyes turned to Arthur, who had gone pale and was staring at his son with horror. Rowan, he whispered. You shouldn't have. What do you mean, unite? I interrupted him, turning to my grandson. What are you talking about? Rowan, suddenly realizing he'd said too much, fell silent, looking at me and his father. It was just a conversation, Mom, Arthur interjected. Nothing specific, just options. Options for what? I wasn't going to back down. Selling the company? A merger? Explain. Strategic partnerships, Randall interjected. Global Food Services is interested in expanding its presence in your region. They're willing to offer very favorable terms. Favorable to whom? I felt my insides grow cold. For the company, for the employees, or for the shareholders who will get the money and leave? For everyone, Randall said. It's business, Marjorie. If there's an opportunity to sell the company, why not? Because there are more important things than money, I shook my head. Global Food is known for buying up local companies, squeezing everything they can out of them, and then closing them down or selling them off piecemeal. It's the exact opposite of everything I've built and valued. You're exaggerating, Willow interjected. It's a large, multinational corporation with vast resources. They could take Huddle Catering to the next level. Or destroy everything that makes us special, I countered. Our customer relationships, our reputation, our corporate culture. You've always been too sentimental, Mom. Willow shook her head. Business is business. And when were you planning on letting me know about these negotiations? I asked, feeling the anger displace the shock. After everything was settled? Or after I was dead? We weren't planning anything behind your back, Arthur tried to reassure me. These were just preliminary discussions. We wanted to see if there was any potential for cooperation at all. And what did you find out? I looked him straight in the eye. He looked away. They're, interested. They're offering a good price. But it's in the early stages. I looked at Willow, at Randall, at Arthur. My own children and son-in-law were planning to sell the company I'd spent a lifetime building to a corporation known for its ruthless methods, not caring about employees, not caring about customers, not caring about reputation, only about the money they'd get. That's why you were so eager to remove me from management, I said quietly. Not because you thought I was incompetent. It was because you knew I'd never agree to such a deal. The silence was more eloquent than any answer. It wasn't just me you betrayed, I continued. You betrayed the whole company, all the people who had worked with us faithfully for years, all the customers who trusted us. Mom, you're being dramatic. Willow rolled her eyes. No one betrayed anyone. We're just looking at business opportunities. No, Willow, you're looking at opportunities to destroy it and enriching yourself. Dinner was completely ruined. Willow and Randall left shortly afterward without saying goodbye. Arthur, ashamed of his son's revelations, mumbled apologies, but I barely listened to him. Rowan, upset at having caused the scandal, sat quietly in the corner. When they left too, Iris and I were left alone in the dining room amidst the uneaten food and unfinished wine. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Haddle, she said quietly. I shouldn't have come. My presence only made things worse. No, dear, I smiled tiredly. It's not your fault. It would have come out sooner or later anyway. And you know what? I'm even glad I know exactly what they're planning. It confirms that I made the right decision. The week after the disastrous family dinner passed intense silence. Neither Willow nor Arthur made any attempt to contact me. At work, they kept formal and distant, communicating only on necessary work matters. I made no attempt to make contact. I needed time to think things through and prepare for the next step. The revelation about the negotiations with Global Food Services confirmed my worst fears. My children didn't just want to remove me from management, they planned to completely change the essence of the company I had created. To sell it to a corporation known for its ruthless methods. Turn it into another faceless part of the global food chain. All of this only made me more certain of the decision I'd made a month ago. Iris deserved to be the heir to Huddle Catering, not only because she was talented and loyal, but because she shared my values and understood the true essence of the company. For her, as for me, it was not just a business, but a business with heart and soul. It was time to announce my decision, not just legally, through a will, but publicly, so that everyone knew my intentions. I called Simon for advice. Are you sure you want to do it now? He asked after hearing my plan. It will create a huge amount of tension in the company. Your children might try to challenge the decision while you're alive. I know, I replied. But I'd rather announce my decision myself and explain my reasons than leave it for later, when I'm gone and Iris has to deal with it alone. Simon thought for a moment. It makes sense, but be prepared for some serious resistance. Perhaps a permanent break with the children. That prospect hurt, but I'd already accepted it. Better an honest breakup than fake harmony, I said. Besides, they'd made their own choice when they decided to go behind my back. The next step was to talk to Iris. All this time, I hadn't told her about the new will so as not to create additional pressure. But now she needed to know. I invited her to my house on Sunday. Neutral territory, no risk of being overheard by coworkers. She arrived exactly at the appointed time, a little wary, clearly not understanding what the meeting was for. Have a seat, dear. I pointed to a chair in the living room. Would you like some tea? No, thank you. She sat down with her hands in her lap, a gesture I'd noticed in her moments of excitement. Is something wrong, Mrs. Haddle? I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. Iris, what I'm about to tell you could change your life, and I want you to know that you don't have to accept what I'm offering. It's your choice, and I'll understand any decision you make. She looked puzzled but nodded. About a month ago, I changed my will, I continued. Before, the controlling interest in Huddle Kettering was to be divided equally between Willow and Arthur upon my death. Now I've decided differently. I paused, watching Iris's reaction. She listened attentively without interrupting. According to the new will, 60% of the company goes to you, Iris. 15% goes to Willow, 15% to Arthur, and 10% is split between Rowan and the orphan charity I plan to set up. Iris stared at me wide-eyed, clearly not believing what she was hearing. Mrs. Heddle, I don't understand. Why don't you? Why me? Because you deserve it, I said simply. Because you understand Huddle Catering better than my own children. Because you'll care about the company, about the people who work there, about the values it's built on. And Willow and Arthur, they have other priorities. Iris was silent for a moment, trying to make sense of what she was hearing. Then she shook her head. But it's too much. I cannot accept such a gift. It's not fair to your children. I had expected such a reaction. Iris had never sought power or wealth, another quality that set her apart from Willow and Arthur. It's not a gift, Iris. It's a responsibility. And I'm offering it to you because I know you recognize the weight of it. You won't use the company for your own enrichment or ambition. You will take care of it, grow it in the direction I think is right. But your children, they will never forgive me, or you. Perhaps, I sighed. But it's a price I'm willing to pay to protect my life's work. And as for you, if you don't want to take that responsibility, I understand. We'll find another solution. Iris hesitated, looking out the window at the fall garden. I didn't rush her. This really was a decision that could change her whole life. When are you going to announce it? She finally asked. Tomorrow? I called a family meeting. Willow, Arthur, their spouses, Rowan, and you, of course. She turned pale. Tomorrow? So soon? The longer I put it off, the harder it's going to be. Besides, after our last dinner and Rowan's revelations about negotiating with Global Food, I don't want to take any chances. Willow and Arthur might make some other moves to seize control of the company. Iris took a deep breath, then nodded. I'll be there. If you are truly confident in your decision, I will accept that responsibility. Not for money or power, but for the company, for you. I promise I'll do everything I can to honor your trust. I felt a heavy weight lifted off my shoulders. Iris didn't let me down, as always. Thank you, dear. I knew I could count on you. I was up early the next day, even though the meeting wasn't until noon. I couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts running through my head. I thought about what I would say to the kids, how I would explain my decision. I tried to anticipate their reactions, even though I knew in my heart that they would not accept my choice, would not understand my motives. I prepared everything for the meeting: snacks, drinks, documents I wanted to show them. I wore my best suit, dark blue, austere but elegant. I wanted to look not like an older woman making an emotional decision, but like a confident executive making a considered strategic choice. Willow and Randall arrived first, precisely at noon, not a minute earlier. Willow was tense but held herself with ostentatious confidence. Randall looked wary, apparently expecting a continued confrontation after the last dinner. Mom, Willow kissed my cheek. You look good. Thank you, dear. I pointed to the living room. Come on in. The others will be here soon. Arthur and Rowan arrived 10 minutes later. My son seemed confused and unsure, clearly not knowing what to expect from this meeting. Rowan, on the other hand, was animated and curious. This was an adventure for him, not a potential family crisis. Iris was the last to arrive at 12:15 sharp, as we'd agreed. I wanted the whole family assembled by the time she arrived. She was pale but put together, dressed in a simple black dress, her hair neatly styled. She looked professional and composed. Willow and Arthur exchanged perplexed glances when they saw Iris. They clearly hadn't expected her presence at the family gathering. What is she doing here? Willow whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Iris is here at my invitation, I answered firmly. And the reason will become clear very soon. Now please, everyone have a seat. When everyone was seated in the living room, Willow and Randall on the couch, Arthur and Rowan in the chairs, Iris a little ways away, I stood in front of them, gathering my thoughts for my speech. I've gathered you all here today to announce an important decision I've made, I began. A decision that will determine the future of Huddle Kettering after me. Willow tensed, her eyes narrowing. Arthur straightened in his chair. They sensed something serious was coming. As you know, the last few months have been difficult for our family and the company, I continued. There have been disagreements, conflicts, attempts to change the course I believe is right. And all of this has made me think seriously about what will happen to Huddle Catering after I step away from the business. Have you decided to retire? Arthur asked quickly. No, I shook my head. As long as I'm able to run the company, I will. But no one lasts forever, and I need to make sure my life's work is in good hands. I paused, looking at each of the people present. A month ago, I changed my will. According to the new version, the controlling interest in Huddle Kettering 60% will go to Iris Forsyth upon my death. There was dead silence in the room. Willow and Arthur froze as if struck by thunder. Randall turned black. Rowan stared at me wide-eyed, clearly not believing what he'd heard. Is this a joke? Willow finally squeezed out, her voice shaking with barely contained rage. No, Willow, this is my final decision, I said calmly, but firmly. You and Arthur will each get 15% of the shares. 10% will be split between Rowan and the orphan charity I'm setting up. You can't do that! Willow jumped up, her face contorted with anger. This is our company, our inheritance. You can't give it to some upstart. I can, Willow. I kept my voice low. I own the company and I have every right to use it as I see fit. We'll contest the will, Randall intervened. You're out of your mind if you think you can disinherit your own children in favor of a stranger. Don't threaten me, Randall. I looked at him with cold certainty. The will is legally impeccable. There were independent witnesses at the signing, including a doctor who confirmed my full capacity. You could try to contest it, of course, but that would be a waste of time and money. Arthur, unlike Willow and Randall, sat silent, staring at the floor. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded quiet and broken. "Why, Mom? What did we do wrong?" The question struck a nerve with me. Not Willow's rage, not Randall's threats, but Arthur's quiet bewilderment. It's not about what you did wrong, Arthur," I said softer. "It's about what Iris is doing right. She understands Huddle Catering, shares my values, my vision for the future of the company. She doesn't see it only as a source of income or status. For her, as for me, it's a business with heart and soul. And for us, it's not?" Willow's eyes glistened with tears of rage. "We've been with this company for 20 years. 20 years, and she's 5. And you're giving her everything?" "Not everything, Willow. 15% each is a significant share. You'll still be shareholders, you'll still get dividends. But Iris will run the company." "Because we wanted to modernize an outdated business?" Willow shook her hands. "Because you saw the opportunities you were missing because of your conservatism?" "No," I shook my head. "Because you were planning to sell global food services behind my back. Because quick profits are more important to you than 30 years of reputation, employees who believe in us, customers who trust us." Willow fell silent, obviously not expecting me to know that much about their plans. "It was just one of the options," she murmured. "We hadn't decided anything definitively. But you were considering it." I looked her straight in the eye. "And that's reason enough for me not to trust you with the future of the company." Rowan, who had been listening silently, suddenly spoke. "Why am I getting a share, Grandma? I don't even work for the company." I smiled at my grandson, the only one here who had asked a really sincere question. "Because you, Rowan, show what your father and aunt lacked: honesty and candor. You're not afraid to tell the truth, even if it's uncomfortable. And I believe that when you grow up, you can make a valuable contribution to the company. If you want to, of course." Rowan nodded thoughtfully. "And who are the orphaned children who will also get a share?" "They're not specific children, but a charitable foundation that will support children without parents," I explained. "The kind Iris had once been." Willow, who had calmed down a bit, was now looking at Iris with undisguised hatred. "Happy?" she asked venomously. "Getting an old woman around, gaining her trust, taking what was rightfully ours?" Iris, who had been sitting silently on the sidelines all this time, finally spoke. "I never sought to do so, Miss Haddle. And when your mother informed me of her decision yesterday, I was as shocked as you are now. I even tried to refuse." "Oh, of course." Willow rolled her eyes. "How noble. But for some reason you said yes, didn't you?" "Because I believe in the company," Iris answered simply. "I believe that Huddle Catering is more than just a business. It's a community of people united by a common purpose. It's a reputation that money can't buy. It's values that can't be measured in dollars." "What a touching speech," Randall said sarcastically. "It's tear-jerking. Now let's get back to reality. Marjorie, you can't seriously think that this girl can run a multi-million-dollar company? She has neither the experience nor the education for it." "She has everything she needs," I countered. "Intelligence, hard work, understanding of business, leadership skills. She'll learn the rest. I started from scratch myself, no experience, no special education, and I built a company worth $47 million. "That's different," Willow exclaimed. "You built it from scratch, bit by bit. She's getting a company she can't handle." "I'll teach her," I said firmly. "For the rest of the time I have, I'm going to give her my knowledge, my experience. By the time she takes control, she'll be ready." "That's crazy." Willow shook her head. "Absolutely insane. You're destroying the company with your own hands." "No, Willow, I'm saving it. From you and Arthur, from your plans to sell it to the first good bidder, from your disregard for everything that makes Huddle Catering special." Willow stood up, gathering her purse. "We're leaving, and we're not coming back. Not to this house, not to this company. Since you chose her over your own children, live with that choice." "Willow," Arthur tried to stop her. "Let's not make any hasty decisions." "No, Arthur," she turned to her brother. "I'm not going to humiliate myself by working under this upstart. You can stay if you want. But I'm leaving." With those words, She headed for the exit, Randall following her. A moment later, the front door slammed. There was silence in the room. Arthur sat with his head down. Rowan looked at him with concern. Iris looked shocked and upset. "I'm sorry about what happened," I said finally. "I'd hoped we could discuss it calmly like adults, but I guess that was naive of me. Did you expect a different reaction?" Arthur looked up at me with tired eyes. "You've robbed us of what you've promised us our whole lives. Of course Willow is furious. I haven't robbed you of everything, Arthur. You still have significant stakes, board seats if you want them. It's just that control of the company will go to the person I trust with its future." Arthur sighed. "I don't know what to say, Mother. It's very painful, but I won't make a scene like Willow did. I need time to think things through." "I understand," I nodded. "And I respect your right to your feelings. The door will always be open for you, Arthur. And for Rowan, of course." My grandson, who had been listening intently to the whole conversation, suddenly asked, "Can I study business too? Not now, of course, but when I finish school?" I smiled, feeling a sudden surge of hope. "Of course, Rowan. I'll be very happy to see you in the company when you're ready." Arthur stood up, putting his hand on his son's shoulder. "We should be off. Thank you for being honest, Mother, even if I don't like what I heard." After they left, Iris and I were left alone. She looked shocked and guilty. "It's a disaster," she whispered. "They hate me, and you too, I think." "They're angry." I sat down next to her. "It's natural. Maybe in time they'll calm down and understand my motives. And if they don't, well, that's the price I'm willing to pay to keep the company." "I'm so sorry I've caused a rift in your family," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "You're not the cause, Iris." I took her hand. "It's a difference in values, in priorities, in vision. You were just caught in the middle of this conflict, and I'm grateful for your willingness to accept responsibility despite the difficulties." She nodded, wiping away her tears. "I won't let you down, Mrs. Haddle. I swear I will do everything I can to ensure that Haddle Catering continues to thrive and grow in the direction you think is right." "I know, dear," I smiled. "That's exactly why I chose you." A lot changed over the next few months. Willow quit the company, as promised. Arthur stayed, though our relationship became formal and detached. Rowan, to my surprise and delight, showed a genuine interest in the business and started coming to the office after school, learning the basics of the various departments. I actively taught Iris all aspects of management, sharing my experience, knowledge, and contacts. She absorbed the information like a sponge and quickly grew as a manager, gaining the respect of employees and clients. Gradually, I gave her more and more authority, watching her make decisions, always thoughtful, balanced, and in line with the company's values. Some managers, especially those closer to Willow, left too. But most stayed, seeing that the company's course hasn't changed, that we still adhere to the principles that have always made Huddle Catering special: quality, honesty, caring for people. As I watched Iris confidently negotiating with a major new client, I felt a sense of calm and satisfaction. I had made the right choice. Huddle Catering will be in good hands when it is my time to leave. My life's work will continue, evolving in the direction I believe is right.